As we finish up week 4, we're going to start talking about the chunks or the sections of the documented argument that we'll be working on over the next few weeks. We'll also talk about how to tackle a larger writing assignment like the documented argument. But let's start first with the pieces of the documented argument that everybody's essay should have. Everyone's essay is going to need a counter-argument. You'll see that in the prompt. There's something about a counter-argument, it's sometimes called a refutation. And what that is you anticipate what a disagreement would look like about your argument, and you address that disagreement in your essay. Also, because we're writing in APA format, everyone will need a title page, they'll need an abstract, and they'll need a reference list. You also need an information graphic and some kind of image that you can integrate in any part of your essay, and we'll talk about all that later in the coming days and weeks. The prompt, however, only mentions the APA format piece and the counter-argument. So how do you make decisions about what else your documented argument needs to have? Your audience. For Wednesday of week 4, you put together an audience profile, and we talked a bit about how to identify an audience for your project. So what does your audience need to know? That's going to help you determine what kind of sections you need to include in your documented argument. Let me list a few options. I'll switch up screens here in just a second, and we can talk about different options that you might include in your essay. So here's a generic list of different kinds of sections that you might include in a documented argument. So things that are in bold, or things that are mentioned in sections that are mentioned in the prompt for the documented argument. So a title page, you include that because we're working in APA format. Abstract, same thing. Reference list, same thing. The counter argument is also mentioned in the prompt for the documented argument. And again, that's where you're anticipating where somebody might disagree with your argument, and you address that disagreement in your essay. Everything else is kind of just some generic ideas, that kind of common things that people include in a argumentative essay. So there's usually some kind of introduction that kind of sets up what this project is about. Sometimes it is creative, sometimes it tells a story, sometimes it's an anecdote, a narrative, sometimes it's providing some overall general facts, and then you're kind of narrowing things down into your individual topic. There's usually a section where you're providing some context or some background. The work that you did in the literature review might be helpful here. And then you get into the meat of your proposal or the solution or the thing that you are going to argue. So there might be, within that, there might be a section about implementation or the procedure for implementing your solution. There might be benefits, what's the good that happens if we do this thing that I'm arguing. Feasibility, here's why this is something we could actually do. You don't want to propose that I think people should just move to the moon because of climate change. That's not a very feasible solution to that problem. So these are different kind of sections that you might include with a kind of like a problem solution kind of essay or a proposal type of documented argument. You also have a counter argument. It usually comes towards the end after you proposed your solution. You kind of say, you anticipate what other folks might say, and then you come to the conclusion where you might say, here's what happens if we do not address this issue, or here's how I see this problem going on in the future if we do nothing about it. So there's a few different moves that you might make with a conclusion, and we'll talk about that. And then you conclude with the reference list. So those are common moves that people make when they try to persuade, when they try to put an argument together to get people to act upon a particular issue, or just to get people to change their perception of an issue. Again, what you include and how much time you spend on each section in your documented argument is going to be determined by your audience. That's why that audience profile that we did earlier this week is so important. It helps you make choices later in the writing process. So if you have an audience of people that don't know that there's a problem, you're going to need to spend more time in the background context section persuading them that there actually is a problem that they should act upon. If it's a issue that everybody kind of understands and accepts as being a problem, you're going to need to spend more time on the solution part of it and much less time convincing people that there's a problem. Again, your audience is going to determine how much time you spend on some of these sections of your documented argument. So that's a little bit about the sections for the documented argument. You might also want to take a look at today's supplemental resources for additional ideas about sections that you might include in your own paper. You might also take a look at what folks post today for ideas that you might be able to implement in your own essay. Well, let's take a look next in the next video about how to organize ideas and to do so visually in a way that can kind of help you see where your argument is going. Stay tuned.